When I received a call from Rebecca, my best friend's wife, I couldn't even imagine that the next words would turn my life upside down. "Luke, we need to talk. In person. It's about Hector and your Bridget." Her voice trembled, and I felt a chill run down my spine. We met at a small coffee shop on the outskirts of Austin an hour later. Rebecca looked devastated, her eyes red from crying. What she told me next made my world stop. They're together. Hector and Bridget. For almost a year now. She pulled out her phone and showed me messages, photos, evidence that left no room for doubt. My best friend from university. The guy I'd known for 25 years. The same Hector who was the best man at our wedding 20 years ago. And my wife Bridget, with whom I'd spent all these years together. I sat there, unable to utter a single word. Rebecca continued talking about how she accidentally found their correspondence on Hector's phone a month ago, how she watched them, gathered evidence. She showed me dozens of messages where they discussed how they were deceiving both of us, how they planned meetings when I was on the road. "They meet at our house, Luke. When you're on the road and I'm at work," Rebecca could barely hold back tears. I thanked her and drove home in complete numbness. My profession as a truck driver meant I was often on the road for weeks at a time. Now everything was falling into place. Why Bridget was always so happy to see me off on trips. Why she never complained about my absence. The first few days I just observed. I acted normal, as if nothing had happened. But inside, rage and pain were boiling. I had to act smart. The first thing I did was install a tracking app on her phone when she was taking a shower. Technically it was simple. I always dealt with all the technology in the house, and she didn't even suspect my skills. The app gave me access to all her messages, calls, and real-time location. And oh God, what I saw there. Their correspondence was explicit. They weren't just meeting, they were planning a future together. They discussed how they would soon be free, how they would divorce us and start a new life. Bridget wrote things that broke my heart, that she never loved me, that she married me only for stability, that Hector was the true love of her entire life. 20 years. 20 years of lies. But the biggest shock was yet to come. Tracking her phone, I discovered they weren't only meeting at our house. There were other addresses too, and one of them led me to a small house on the outskirts of Austin. I drove there one evening when I was supposedly on a trip to Dallas, but actually returned early. I parked a block away and waited. Half an hour later, Bridget arrived. Then Hector. But they weren't alone. A couple came out with them, a man and a woman I'd never seen before. All four hugged and went into the house. My mind refused to believe what I was seeing. The next few weeks I continued gathering information. It turned out this house was rented by two people, Hector and Bridget. They paid equally, and that's where they spent time when Rebecca and I were at work. But this other couple, who were they? I hired a private investigator. Not a detective, just an acquaintance who could discreetly capture everything on video. What he filmed was even more shocking. It turned out Hector and Bridget were part of a swinger couple. This other couple, Marcus and Julia, were their regular partners. My world completely collapsed. The woman who worked as a kindergarten teacher, who always looked so innocent and proper, was leading a double life. But the worst was yet to come. Continuing to read their messages, I stumbled upon a conversation that made me speechless. They were planning to poison me. Not kill me, no, that would be too obvious. But Hector, who worked as a gardener and had access to various chemicals, was proposing to gradually add substances to my food that would cause chronic health problems. If he becomes sick, I'll be able to leave without suspicion. I'll say I couldn't bear the burden of care, Bridget wrote. This was no longer just an affair. This was a conspiracy. The discovery hit me like a freight train, and I'd been hit by plenty of those metaphorically in my years on the road. But this was different. This was my wife, the woman I'd trusted with everything, plotting to slowly destroy my health. The woman who kissed me goodbye every time I left for a haul was planning to make me sick enough that she could leave me without looking like the bad guy. I immediately made copies of everything, correspondence, photos, videos. I saved everything on multiple drives. Then I quietly transferred all our joint money from the shared account to my personal one, which I'd opened before the wedding and which Bridget didn't know about. These were savings from 20 years, a considerable sum. Around $75,000, built up through years of long hauls and careful saving. The next step was property. Our house was registered to both of us, but the cars, furniture, appliances, all of it was bought mostly with my money. I began quietly collecting all the receipts, checks, proof of purchases. I spent nights going through old boxes in the garage, finding documentation for every major purchase we'd made. The truck in the driveway? Mine. The new appliances we'd bought last year? Mine. Even the wedding rings, I'd paid for those too. Then I called Rebecca. We met again, and I showed her everything I'd found. She was no less shocked than me. It turned out Hector was also planning something similar with her. Not poisoning, but creating a situation where she would look like an unstable person, so he could easily get a divorce and take most of the property. We joined forces. 2 betrayed partners against 2 traitors. But we didn't just want divorce, we wanted justice. We spent hours at that coffee shop, planning our next moves like generals plotting a military campaign. Rebecca was sharper than I'd given her credit for. She suggested things I hadn't even thought of. I continued playing the role of an unsuspecting husband for another month. During this time, I contacted a lawyer and showed him all the evidence. He assured me that with such evidence, the divorce would be quick and I wouldn't lose anything. In fact, he said, with the poisoning conspiracy, I could potentially press criminal charges. I kept that card in my back pocket. I also contacted Bridget's employer. Anonymously, through a secure email, I sent them information about her double life, including photos from that house. The daycare had a reputation to maintain, and they couldn't afford a scandal. I knew it was harsh, but after reading about their plans to poison me, my sympathy had evaporated completely. With Hector, it was more complicated. He worked for himself, had a small garden care business. But most of his clients were wealthy families with children. I did the same thing, anonymously sent information about his activities to several of his biggest clients. I included screenshots of him discussing the poisoning plan and information about his extramarital activities. People don't want someone like that around their kids and homes. During this month of preparation, I had to be an actor. Every morning, I'd wake up next to Bridget and pretend everything was fine. She'd make me breakfast, and I'd watch carefully as she prepared it, making sure she wasn't actually adding anything. I'd kiss her goodbye, tell her I loved her, and drive off to my truck. Then I'd sit in the cab, reading their latest messages about how stupid I was, how easy I was to manipulate. The hardest part was maintaining my composure. There were moments when I wanted to scream, to confront them, to let all my rage out. But I knew that would ruin everything. Revenge is a dish best served cold, as they say, and I was planning to serve it frozen solid. I documented everything. Every time Bridget said she was going to a friend's house, I'd check the tracking app and see her at that rental house. Every time she claimed she had to work late at the daycare, I'd see her location at Hector's place. I saved screenshots, downloaded videos, created a comprehensive timeline of their affair. Then came D-Day. I returned from a supposedly long haul earlier than planned. I opened the door to my house and found Bridget and Hector together, in our bedroom, in our bed. The scene was predictable, screaming, accusations, tears. But I remained calm. I just took out my phone and showed them screenshots of their correspondence, especially those parts where they discussed the poisoning plan. Hector's face turned white as chalk. Bridget started denying it, but I interrupted her. I've already given copies of all this to my lawyer. And to the police. Yes, conspiracy to cause bodily harm is a criminal offense. But I won't file an official complaint if you sign the divorce papers and give up any claims to the property. It was a straightforward offer. Either prison or a quiet divorce with nothing. Bridget cried, begged, promised it was a joke, that they would never actually do it. But the evidence was irrefutable. She tried every tactic, first anger, yelling at me for spying on her, for violating her privacy. Then tears, sobbing about how sorry she was, how it meant nothing. Then bargaining, saying she'd do anything if I just gave her another chance. But I was done. 20 years of my life, wasted on someone who'd never loved me. 20 years of working long hours on the road, missing holidays and birthdays, all to provide for us, for our future. And she'd been planning to poison me. To make me sick, weak, dependent, just so she could leave without looking bad. Hector tried a different approach. He tried to play the brotherhood card, talking about our friendship, about all the years we'd known each other. Think about all the good times, man, he said. We can work through this. I looked at him. This man I'd considered my best friend, who'd stood beside me at my wedding, who I'd trusted with everything, and felt nothing but contempt. The moment you touched my wife, we stopped being friends, I told him. The moment you planned to poison me, you became my enemy. Now get out of my house. The legal process moved quickly. With all the evidence I had, Bridget's lawyer advised her to take the deal. She signed the papers within a week. We agreed to sell the house and split the proceeds equally, But since I'd already transferred our savings, she got much less than she expected. The look on her face when she realized what I'd done was almost worth all the pain she'd caused. She took her personal belongings and moved out. I made sure to be there when she packed, documenting everything she took to ensure she didn't take anything that was legally mine. She tried to talk to me a few times, tried to explain, to apologize, to somehow make me understand. But I just stood there silently, watching her pack up 20 years of lies. And then the real consequences began. Bridget lost her job. The daycare administration couldn't risk their reputation, and they found a formal reason to fire her. In Austin, where everyone knows everyone, especially in the education sector, finding a new job as a kindergarten teacher became impossible. The scandal had spread through the tight-knit community of educators. No one wanted to hire someone with her reputation. Hector lost most of his clients. Wealthy families didn't want to let someone with such a reputation onto their property. His business began to crumble. The families he'd worked for years weren't just dropping him, they were warning other families about him. His reputation in Austin's upper-class circles was destroyed. Rebecca divorced Hector too, taking him for everything he was worth. She was smarter than both of them. She'd documented everything, hired a ruthless lawyer, and made sure Hector walked away with almost nothing. Last I heard, he was living in a studio apartment and working as a general laborer for a landscaping company, a far cry from his own business. But the worst thing was that when they could finally be together, it turned out they didn't want to. All along, their affair had been spiced with forbidden fruit, the adrenaline of secrecy. When the secret disappeared, so did the passion. I watched it happen from a distance. Through mutual acquaintances, through social media, through the grapevine of gossip that runs through any community. Bridget and Hector tried to make it work for about a month after our divorces were finalized. They moved in together in a cheap apartment on the wrong side of Austin. But reality hit them hard. Without the thrill of sneaking around, without the excitement of an illicit affair, they realized they didn't actually like each other that much. The fantasy was better than the reality. They fought constantly about money, about whose fault it was that they'd lost everything, about the future that would never come. 3 months after the divorce, Bridget contacted me. She was crying, asking for forgiveness, saying she'd made the biggest mistake of her life. Hector had left her for a younger woman. She hadn't found work. The money was running out. She asked if we could talk, if there was any chance of reconciliation, if I could help her financially. I listened to everything she had to say, and then I simply hung up the phone. Not a word, not a response. She'd had 20 years to treat me right, and she'd chosen to betray me in the worst way possible. She'd chosen to plan my poisoning. There was no coming back from that. She called several more times over the following weeks. Then she started sending emails. Long, rambling messages about how sorry she was, about how she'd been confused, about how the affair had been a mistake. She blamed Hector for manipulating her, blamed me for working too much, blamed everyone but herself. I never responded. Eventually, the messages stopped. Rebecca and I stayed in touch. Not romantically. Neither of us was ready for that, and we'd been through too much together. But we became genuine friends, bonded by the shared experience of betrayal. She was my proof that not everyone is a liar, that some people are capable of loyalty and honesty. 2 years have passed now. I'm still in Austin, still working as a truck driver. The money I saved allowed me to buy a small but cozy house. It's mine, fully paid off, and no one can take it from me. I even started dating someone, Sarah, a teacher from a neighboring town. We're not rushing, just enjoying each other's company. She knows about my past, about what happened, and she's been patient with my trust issues. Bridget, from what I've heard, left Austin. She went to some small town where no one knows her story. She works as a cashier at a supermarket. Lonely, without friends, without the future she'd planned with Hector. Someone told me they saw her profile on a dating app, looking desperate and lost. Hector is still in Austin, but barely making ends meet. His business closed, and he works as a hired hand for a large landscaping company. That younger woman also left him when the money ran out. He tried to reach out to me once, about a year after everything happened. He sent me a long message on social media, trying to apologize, trying to explain. I blocked him without reading it all. Sometimes I think about those 20 years we lived together. Were there real moments? Did she ever love me, at least in the beginning? I'll never know the answer. And honestly, I've stopped caring. What matters is that I'm free now, free from the lies and the betrayal. The house sold for a good price. After we split it, I had enough for a down payment on my new place. I redecorated everything, making it completely different from the home I'd shared with Bridget. New furniture, new colors, new memories. This was my fresh start. My job helped with the healing process. Long hours on the road gave me time to think, to process everything that had happened. The solitude of the highway became therapeutic. I'd listen to podcasts, audiobooks, music, anything to keep my mind occupied and moving forward. I reconnected with old friends I'd lost touch with over the years, friends who were shocked when they heard what had happened. Some people asked me if I regretted how I handled it, if I thought I'd been too harsh. But I don't regret anything. They weren't just having an affair, they were planning to poison me. To make me sick enough that Bridget could leave without looking like the villain. That crossed a line from betrayal into something much darker. The tracking app, the surveillance, the calculated reveal, some might call it excessive. But I call it self-preservation. If I'd confronted them immediately, without evidence, without a plan, they could have denied everything. They could have gaslighted me, made me look paranoid. Instead, I made sure I had everything documented, everything proven, everything ironclad. Rebecca told me that Hector tried to make amends with her 2 months after their divorce. He showed up at her workplace, causing a scene, begging for another chance. She had to call security to have him removed. Last she heard, he'd been seeing a therapist, trying to work through his issues. Too little, too late. The revenge, if you can call it that, wasn't about hurting them. It was about justice. It was about making sure they faced consequences for their actions. They'd had everything, stable marriages, good lives, respect in the community. And they'd thrown it all away for an affair that meant nothing once the secrecy was gone. I learned a lot about human nature through this experience. I learned that people are capable of unimaginable betrayal, even those you trust most. I learned that sometimes the person lying next to you at night is a complete stranger. I learned that trust, once broken, can never be fully repaired. But I also learned that I'm stronger than I thought. That I can survive betrayal, process it, and come out the other side. That I deserve better than someone who would plan to poison me. That starting over at 45 isn't the end, it's a new beginning. Sarah has been good for me. She's honest, straightforward, and has no patience for games or lies. Her own past relationship ended badly, not cheating, but years of emotional neglect. We understand each other's scars. We take things slow, building trust brick by brick. Sometimes late at night, I still get angry. I think about those 20 years, about everything I sacrificed, about the future I thought we'd have together. But then I look around at my new life, at my new home, at the possibilities ahead of me, and I realize that Bridget actually did me a favor. She freed me from a marriage that was built on lies from the start. The story spread through Austin's social circles. People took sides, as they always do. Some felt sorry for Bridget and Hector, saying that everyone makes mistakes. But most people were horrified by the poisoning plan. That detail changed everything from a simple affair into something much more sinister. I heard through the grapevine that Marcus and Julia, the other couple, had also split up after everything came out. Their involvement in the affair had caused its own set of problems. It seemed like everyone connected to this mess had paid a price. Life continues. I work, I live, I'm building new relationships based on honesty and respect. And somewhere out there, Bridget lives with the consequences of her decisions, alone and abandoned, exactly as she left me. Only the difference is that I got out of that darkness. And she's still there, and will never get out. She made her choices, she lived her lies, and now she lives with the aftermath. That's not revenge, that's just karma. Every time I drive my truck down the highway now, I feel free. Free from the lies, free from the betrayal, free from wondering if the woman at home actually loves me. The road ahead is clear, and for the first time in 20 years, I'm excited about where it leads. Thank you for watching the video to the end. YouTube may no longer suggest my channel to you, so subscribe to it to receive new interesting stories. You will also help the channel grow and improve the quality of its content. A playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to is now displayed on the screen. You can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.